Okay, so we're here with Azabua Utukku, who has the MVK 218 channel on YouTube, and we've given him the Lazavama chant of Gav Uki Mot Abam Fu Riora Uiru Ezebmagur Uru. And so, any impressions about that this time?
Had a Lovecraftian kind of tone to it, kind of a Cthulhu photog.
It does. It is a language of dreams. Sometimes it's not dreams. Sometimes I'm awake, but you know. And
well, some of your viewers might remember me from a few years ago. I have been under a few different names: Final Snow, Frozenthia, something or another, long time ago. But yeah.
So you've said that you've made some developments. I don't know. Is your channel new, or is the name just changed?
It is a new channel. I had to delete some of my old channels just because stuff having to do with music and like copyright, but yeah, it's another story. It's mostly just a name change. Azabua Utukku is from the Aurelia text, two names from the Aurelia text, and MVK, as you see in the picture there, stands for Mystic Vampire Clan, which is based off of the Mystic Circle, which was Rod Farrell's coven, I believe, if I remember right, and as well as the Black Heretic Clan, which was a French black metal circle.
And so I don't know if I asked this time, but when it comes to the music you do you intentionally insert symbolism in your style of music, or through the lyrics, or?
Yeah, I very much try to aim for a style of music that I would have heard in my head when I read the Lovecraft story, The Music of Elric Zan. Eric Zan, which is sort of, I believe, about a violinist who just composes these, well, Lovecraftian, indescribable pieces of music. I go for a lot of very speedy analog lo-fi synths to create a chaotic and also ethereal and occult atmosphere. As far as lyrics, I usually try and get as well. I usually don't write lyrics. I will kind of just go off the cuff with it to try and get the most genuine emotion out of it.
Well, as some may know, because I've released, you know, like the after videos of it, but in the temple I fixed up, I've been doing operations in the evening, and I'm about to start with a new series with that, and that's one of the things that I have experienced peculiarly in the temple, is that I've experienced this weird music going on, and it's not just because it's not some loud neighbors or something like this. It's something else, and but sometimes things happen. Okay, well that's a picture of both rooms.
Probably has to do with the acoustics. I actually will sometimes record vocals in my bathroom or like my shower because you get that really cool natural reverb.
Well, no, I mean that, like, have you ever smelt things that weren't like physically there, but they're like on another like some mental or spiritual plane or something like that?
Oh, sure, I get what you mean.
So it's that sort of thing, like, um, and it harkens. I don't remember where it is. It's not, you know, if I was going to use the verse ritually, I'd know where it is, but like one of the things, like in the book of Ezekiel, it mentions that Satan is like the lead musician, and consciously or otherwise, I do think that entities do give people some of the tones that they, some of the patterns and stuff that they're going to use.
I know the verse you're talking about, your timbrels and all that bells from were given to you from the beginning, something like that.
Yeah.
That's the Ezekiel verse you're referring to.
And I've never been terribly coordinated. I ended up memorizing every single chord and note on the guitar, you know, sixth string, but I, you know, but I could never play fast enough to put much of anything together, and it was too frustrating. And then all this stuff, then the internet got better, and there was all this stuff with chanting and all this other stuff, and I, you know, I can read stuff in some other languages anyways. But I don't quite know what which two, what are these two words, Azabua Utukku, what do they mean?
Well, as I said, they're the names given at the end of the Eurelia text, along with Kingu, Zaztur. I'm remembering off the top of my head. You know, so they're two of the chaos demons of Tiamat.
And well, I started doing, I didn't plan to do this, but I started last for the last winter solstice, that you know, I do 8 seasonals, and one of the things I did was the end times thing, and that's what you see before you, is you see part of my board for that, and you couldn't really find it in one source, but you have, you know, you have Tiamat and Kingu, and you know, you have the 12 around that, so you have a group of 14, but a lot of this stuff doesn't occur in one myth. But like a parallel thing is, it's where you get the name Palestine from, because the ton is Tiamat, and Leviathan and Behemoth were basically the two that were sort of an equivalent myth to that.
I'm very glad you brought that up, considering that Joy of Satan seems to have a opposing view. They believe that somehow Leviathan, which they associate with Tiamat, is a metaphor for Jewish power, or sorry,
A lot of that stuff is, but like when I was talking to Xaro when on that program, and you know, the Joy of Satan people, some of them have commented on my channel, upset about the whole Xaro thing, I guess. And the but it's like some of the stuff, if you say stuff backwards, sometimes you're saying the exact same stuff, so that kind of thing doesn't go off, particularly in a language like that. But I like,
no, and they just sorry, and they just nicked that whole thing from Paul Huson's Mastering Witchcraft. The forums did not like when anyone brings up Paul Huson anymore. It used to be on their reading list. They used to tell you to read that book, but now they don't, because you know, people put two and two together.
One thing, like one of the reasons why I like some particular order is better than main group of the Order 9 Angles, because it's the main Order 9 Angles stuff. They like want to avoid anything Hebrew and all that other stuff. And it's like, first of all, I to a degree agree, because it's like, one, you can either use things according to your own intentions and all that stuff, but two, Hebrew is actually the language of the Jews, not the language before the Jews. So they called it Hebrew when it was, they only called it Hebrew when everybody else stopped speaking it. And there's actually some differences in between, but it actually makes its way from, from the, there was an influence from the Ukraine, Russia area, and that influence gave them their alphabet, and they kind of narrowed it down to 22 letters, but it wasn't limited to the Jews. That history is way exaggerated. The idea they were this just big group all over the place and unilateral and all that. Like, there was never a single Judaism. But
yeah, I'm not a linguistics expert, but I have definitely heard that claim before, that it's a reconstructed language.
But like the Necronomicon, it's like, yes, it was a representative thing in the fiction, and the thing was brought up, and yes, it's a jumble of different what's the word that I'm thinking of? I don't want to say Mediterranean.
Different cosmologies.
What's the word? The Fertile Crescent. Anyways, the cuneiform languages.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm not thinking of the word. What's wrong with me? I don't know it. But at the moment, but it represents the sort of mythology that did happen. People don't realize. You look at any culture, whether you're talking monotheism to complete polytheism or whatever division you're looking at, there was never one type of religion or one take on the story. So the Necronomicon does actually represent the sort of thing that could have existed. It doesn't explicitly exist as it's laid out. The thing about the symbols, that's not quite right, and they mix up the languages, but it does represent something that could have been.
I think, to me at least, what the value that I hold in the Necronomicon is mostly just in its connections with other things, in the sense that, as a follower of the ancient ones, I mean, there's really only one part of the Necronomicon that I actually have a use for, but it is absolutely, you can draw these parallels with Gnosticism, and we're going to get into it here a bit, but I mean, the connections that Aksaru actually made in his exposing Joy of Satan video, I think, were not appreciated at the time, because it was actually much more in depth than people gave him credit for. And I get he was not a perfect deliverer of this message.
Yeah. Well,
he was flawed in many ways.
Going back and forth, but I think unlike a lot of things, like the people who want to sell you limited edition grimoires for more money, and they're not even really fitting the definition of grimoires half the time. I think he really did try to figure out the truth by jumbling it from these different sources and finding the parallels and all that sort of stuff. Although he obviously went a bit too far at times. But I think he was authentic in his search, nonetheless.
Well, for me at least, in my research, particularly the connections with the Summit Lighthouse, it's unrefutable, in my opinion. The connections between Joy of Satan and Summit Lighthouse and the rest of these UFO, Anunnaki, New Age organizations, they all believe the same thing. And once you get into this New Age stuff, there's all sorts of connections with the Theosophical Society, the OTO, and then you get into the Freemasons, and the Freemasons, by extension, gave birth to AA and Synanon, who are we can get into this in a second, but they're one of the biggest human trafficking
organizations. Crowley or different AA?
Oh, sorry, Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh, okay, yeah.
12-step programs, yeah. People do not understand how powerful and influential that group is. people, think they're just like a group that like sits in church basements and tells stories and laments about the, you know, hardships of drinking. And that is part of it for sure. That's most of the what you would call true believers, but that's any cult. You have the good people who are mostly just the followers, and then you have the organization,
I've never been to any of those, but all I
and you get
know
into
is
things like Synanon and attack therapy. And what's up? You're saying?
all I know is that I don't know the actual numbers, but as far as people I've known, it seems almost like NA and AA, they end up getting worse after that. Some people it helps, and that's why it continues. But I guess a
That's
lot
the big secret.
just like this one group I'm looking into that I've see, they didn't write it so they can kick me out, which I think is great. I'm staying an official member forever. If that's going to be the case, I'm going to use that. But that they rely on just probably millions of people have heard of their group by now. But they rely on just a few people here and there to give testimony. Of course, some things have came out, and they sort of were out to begin with. I mean, you give a presentation at the local library in Longmont, Colorado, saying that you're a Heaven's Gate Jim Jones fan that wants to be like a James Bond villainess, and then you start a cult. I mean, people could have figured some stuff out before some of the other stuff, but this person relies on just a minority that says their life is better, and they don't know how, and they don't know anything unique about that group. I mean, because they're not the only group like them that compiles stuff together. But like any one of those self-help things, for example, even if you take it, you despiritualize everything, that self-help stuff, a lot of those people never did that stuff for themselves. They know a friend with a big house, and they do a video at his house and in front of his car or something like that. And a lot of those people will give you permission if if you're the friend or something like that. Oh, just don't go too far, man. But and then it works for somebody, and then they get to re-release their self-help thing with some testimonials.
Yeah, AA's entire like that perfectly describes their literature as well. It's just well, this obviously not real story happened, so trust. I mean, I guess that you could say that about a lot of religions, but the thing about AA is that they present themselves as a secular organization, a therapeutic organization, even a medical organization. You can be sent to AA by the state for community service. And what people really don't know about is that they are responsible for these wilderness therapy group home situations, which is I mentioned it before, is the biggest, in my opinion. I mean, and that's not my opinion. I don't know. Who knows, right? It hasn't been unearthed yet. But as far as I know, the largest open human trafficking ring in the country. They get free labor from these kids. They do it in,
and that's of course why we run the prison system differently. Like I fully support the death penalty for 3 offenses, and I guess treason up to that extent. But I mean, that applies to those three crimes, for example. And it's like, but we don't execute for that. We want people in prison for life because it's super cheap labor, and they experiment on you. Both with the drugs.
It's like that. It is like.
But, and
I mean, I don't want to say it's like prison.
Some of the group homes are like that. After I got released, they sent me to a group home, and I was there for a while. And it's like I didn't know my rights. You could actually refuse medication, but I didn't know
That's
that.
a big one.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's right even under the and we have a president that that one of the first things, actually it's they really, you know, because both people are signed off on that stuff. Both people are responsible. I don't know what this nonsense is. That, oh, vice presidents don't actually do anything in office except wait in case the person dies. It's like, what? That's not true. But the signing a pardon on all that stuff, medical crimes, signing a pardon on all that stuff. That was a sign of what was to come, right?
Yeah, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. I stopped going to conventional talk therapy because the uh people there will not let you continue going unless you take medication. And the uh the psychiatrist, it was a, just trying to put me on everything possible, and then of course I saw another
I have
therapist, and he would
especially
say, no, this guy's it doesn't know what he's talking about, and you need to be on this and that. And it's like, well,
it's like my prison medical records have blackouts when it comes to my medication, because they knew they could just put me on anything. But they never for prescribing anything, whether it was for ADHD, whatever. Did they ever check the blood and urine to see if those chemical imbalances did exist and what to actually do about them from a scientific perspective?
yeah. And the thing is, they do this intentionally at these group homes. And I mean, when you get into it, like these are the whole wilderness retreat thing is a scam. There is fundamentally no difference between a quote unquote wilderness therapy retreat and a boot camp. Uh, and what they do is they call it zombifying. They put you on so much medication that you behave, and kids die from this. They die from drug overdoses prescribed to them by these
I think I was pretty
doctors.
close to that a couple times myself. Particularly some of these, ADHD class stuff that, like, it's, you feel my heart rate was like 180 something when I was resting. I don't even know what it was before they looked at it. They put me on something because they knew they put me on something. And it's like, I didn't have ADHD. I just, uh, well, actually, I think I did at that point. But anyways, it wasn't what actually worked for me is for a lot of stuff, magical discipline. And people say, oh, magical thinking, you're just inventing. No, actually, I kind of don't do that. I don't like most of the videos you see, whether it's tarot cards or whether it's sitting in your magic circle, whatever. It's just imagine it till it's real, or imagine that it's real, and imagine all this stuff happening that you aren't aware. I've never, I didn't take that approach. But I mean, the discipline of breath practice and all that other stuff, that's what enabled me to stay still and all that other stuff.
Well, it's interesting because these places are aware of that, and they have taken to teaching all this new age spiritualism. And that's why I brought up the connection with one of the reasons I brought up the connection with Summit Lighthouse and so on is because there is actually a deep connection between, I mean, okay, for example, the wilderness retreat I was sent to was called Blue Fire, right? What is the blue fire, right? It's Archangel Michael. And of course, this head guy who ran it was like a total cult leader type personality, going off about very ignorant Western takes on things like Buddhism and yoga and that kind of thing. And I believe that certain organizations like this use void meditation as a means of brainwashing. And I'm not saying meditation's bad at all, in any, but there's
I know if you look at like the literature, for example, I don't remember exactly when there was at some point, like there was a switch over like it was like religion and science, and then switch over to fiction. And but I think the fiction mainly was a way to get through things in a new way. And so you weren't even thinking of it as real, and then it programs you in its way. Like some of the stuff in songs, it's like I remember songs from the 80s that said stuff about 2020 and riots and stuff like this, and it's like, and then all of a sudden,
Here we are.
but yeah, they kind of sneak you. So I think like there's a lot of logos and stuff. Like the Yazidi show up a lot in terms of some of the television symbols. I mean, there's of course that channel with the peacock, but that looks just
No,
like
and there's another good point Xaru made.
from 9,000 years
Sorry.
ago.
No, just Xaru went into all that about Malek Taus and the connections with Archangel Michael and the seven rays. Sorry, that's what I was trying to think of, the seven rays.
I think that's actually where we get where it wasn't the Hindus didn't have belief in reincarnation until after the Greeks actually. So that was so it actually kind of came, as far as we can tell, the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks, pretty much everybody got it through the Yazidi from what I mean, the ancient one, before, but Christianity can be thought of as a way of morphing that same mythology, but you don't have Nog as the ugly one, and you have Jesus and the seven archangels. I mean,
sorry, what was the last part?
I said instead of Nog, the stinking body, and maybe beautiful, maybe ugly, that sort of thing. You have it kind of morphed into something new with Christianity and Jesus and the seven archangels.
Oh, okay.
So
I did want to. Sorry, continue.
No, continue. This is about your opinion. So.
No, I just wanted to because I know we are limited on time. Just wanted to briefly go back to the subject of these therapy programs, just because I wanted to mention that the rampant abuse is not limited to physical labor as well. I mean, on a psychological level, this whole approach is based on a widely debunked approach created by Synanon, which literally stood for like Sinners Anonymous, which should give you an idea about the type of organization this was. Attack therapy was similar to a 12-step meeting, but essentially everybody just berates you, like insults you. And obviously this constitutes as just blatant psychological abuse, nothing else. And I don't think I even need to elaborate further on the very concept that these are gendered institutions where like large bodies of teenage girls are being, staffed by grown men. I don't think I need to elaborate on that further.
I'm aware of what happened in one of the prisons, one of the women's prisons. I forget exactly where it is, but it's in the north. It's in Northwest Oregon, so it's where some of the people from Portland, I guess, go. The guards and stuff like this, and a lot of therapy places do have some problems with that. But the thing I'm more directly privy to testimony to is like Diamond Ranch before they shut it down, or I don't know if they've opened it back up or what the deal is. Dr. Phil used to recommend that place.
Yeah, he's one of the big pushers of this shit.
So,
yeah,
and people they spend like 50 grand or something for their kid to go there, and it's like it is a wayward camp, but to see that some of the way they treat you, it's like they have this thing called homeless, where they basically malnourish you and don't provide you shelter in the middle of winter. You know, they take you out in the desert in Utah. You get
I mean,
water, white rice.
anyone
That's
who
about it.
thinks, sorry,
Um, but yeah, it seems like everybody that I've known of that went there, um, they uh, they were worse afterwards. They were already they've already once you put it through the homeless thing and you have a problem with drugs, and it's like, okay, I don't even worry about being home. I've been through it. That's, you know, in their head.
well, anyone who thinks I'm exaggerating about these places should check out a website called orangepapers.com, I believe. Orange Papers, just look up Orange Papers. And I mean, it's mostly about AA, but it has a section called Boot Camp Gulags for Kids, something like that. It is just pages and pages of kids dying at these places. And basically, there's no accountability because these people are literally like in bed with the politicians. There's pictures of these people like side by side with George W. Bush. So it's documented, it's on camera, what they're doing. The reason it's allowed to happen, well, and partially another thing too I wanted to get to is they do it in foreign countries as well.
Well,
Like
like what
in
came
Latin
out in
America
1990,
mostly.
what came out in the founding year of Temple of Blood was what happened with the Mother of Darkness Castle and the network associated with that group. You know what I'm talking about?
I know a little bit about Temple of Blood. I have,
But I mean
from what I can
specifically the
tell, they're the kind of people I don't like.
I mean specifically the fact that that narrative that's connected to. It was mentioned by the first Bush that was president. He was asked about these 1,000 points. Somebody figured it out. It's like, what about the 1,000 points of light? That it wasn't just some word he's throwing out. It's like, take me there. I want to be there with you. And he told his campaign manager said that you know, even as president, he didn't have authority who could go there. And so there was a network also. NATO in particular was NATO and the U and the EU have specifically been linked to that. And the story is all basically disappeared. It's one of those things that appear and disappear. But yeah, there's a whole network of stuff, of horrible things linked to this network. And just like some of these clubs in Hollywood that aren't, you know, they don't really do anything, I don't think, but they pick up some people who they think are going to be influencers and all that. And they invite them over and they basically get stuff they can blackmail them with. The Mother of Darkness Castle thing, they do more than just, you know, put you through your 7 deadly sins and be witnesses to all that so they can say something about it later. They actually somewhat train people. But some of that stuff that's come out in themes of movies and stuff, there's you know, let me think of some phrases that Eyes Wide Shut, The Most Dangerous
I
Game.
love that movie.
What's the other one? That's really stuff that's been said to come through there. And just like Slash, did you ever see that interview with Slash where he talked about the Hollywood party that he went to, but he can't say
No.
anymore?
Slash, I gotta see that.
So Slash said something to the effect of, so he was invited to a party where these rich people kill someone. And all he knew is that he couldn't say anything, and he wasn't supposed to say, is that he needed that. It's like, no, I'm not coming back to this, but you know, so stuff goes on, you know, and they use it to form their network of power. People think like the real I'll throw out the word Nazism because that word predates some stuff that goes on and predates the group that the similar word that they attach to it that doesn't mean what people think it means. Has nothing to do with that group that started in the 20s. But going back, some of the people from some of these groups have said it goes back 9,000 years. And you may know of 9,000 years that one of their myths is like, for example, you know, the base 7 myth where we get the straw, it was also the idea of 9. So there are 7 archdemons, and there was Malaktaus over that, whose nickname was Shaitan. But one of the manifestations that before the Peacock form of 4750 BCE, around 9,000 years ago, there were manifestations, they say, of black snakes. And just like the ancient Egyptians talk about, there's this talk about these black snakes, but that aren't physical snakes, but they are, well, I mean, they're talked with like they have physical powers, but like they have a white mark on their head. And that was one of the manifestations of Set as well. When the ancient Egyptians spoke of Set, Set was also spoken about as a black dog with white spot or white spots above its eyes, or as a snake as such. But anyways, the whole thing they say goes back to a plan that predates the event that, you know, about 9,250 years ago or something like that, there was a meteor that came through. And it caused the Black Sea, it made the Red Sea bigger. There was some other stuff that happened. But for some reason, before this period is when some of these groups say their stuff started at. So there's been a long going plan. It's not one generation, just like the video I said I posted today. I think that something that's been planned for a long time may be about to happen.
I mean, they're pretty open about it. That's what the new age means, right? The age of Aquarius, New World Order.
Well, that's the thing. I think that some of it they're getting people in for the sake of this is I'm under 2 minutes before this meeting shuts off, and then but yeah, I think they're getting it. It's more of a vampiric feeding than actually empowering.
That's the conclusion that I've drawn as well. I'm sure you've read The Black Art of Vampirism. You're talking about TOB. They talk about that, about the blood pool, as Vampire the Masquerade would call it. The you know, having a I forget the exact terminology they use, but they use concentration camps and Stalin's gulags as examples. And I think that's exactly what they're doing. And these programs we were just talking about, that's
this book,
the
right?
most overt way, but it's rampant all over the country. And like we were talking about Epstein earlier too, and I think if you look at his temple and you see the owl on top, there's a lot of similarities with that in the Bohemian Club, and for some reason they've associated
you know the mammoth with that.
They've associated the owl with Lilith. I'm not really sure why. They point to the Sumerian statue, which is of Inanna.
Well, linguistically, and some of the myths actually do connect that. But I was thinking more of that temple. It tells you that's where you buy the elite slaves. The Mamluks use that style to say that this is where you buy the top slaves, not just any slaves, but the toply trained slaves.
Sorry, I was before you said there's a linguistic